After her fertile years have passed her by, and as you noted, at that point, the aromatase expression changes in the ovaries, and her estrogens production starts to drop a lot. At that point, she's lost that kind of fat-friendly and even protective effect of the estrogens, and now she's sort of subject to the whims of the androgens a little more with regards to fat storage. Now, this is not to say her androgen levels go up really high. No. They don't change that much. It's just that the estrogens.
It's the relative amount.
That's right.
The relative amount. Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfectly right. And so now her body just starts to store fat in more of an androgenic way. In other words, as you perfectly mentioned a moment ago, more centrally. And she can literally start to lose some of that fat that she had been storing on her breasts, hips, and buttocks, because the estrogens were what was determining where that fat should be stored. And that then starts to, in a way, that at that point, the woman starts to lose the metabolic protection that the estrogens had provided her. Estrogens, in a way, provide a metabolic protection for a woman, allowing her to basically avoid the consequences of her fat tissue, the metabolic negative consequences. She's been protected from it. Estrogens help her body know what to do with fat and handle the fat in a good way. With the loss of those estrogens during menopause, now she's no more protected from the fat than her male counterpart is. Her risk of disease from fat tissue starts to match that in the males. If you were to take a fat biopsy from a woman and a fat biopsy from a man, and if you were able to put those fat biopsy tissue, the fat tissue, in a little beaker in a science lab and keep the tissue alive and active, it would literally be secreting 40% more of its fat at any moment than the fat cells from the male, from that same location. You pop it out of the belly. So you invoking the muscle, that could be part of the demand. In other words, the pull, where there could be a differential expression from the female muscle cells. I don't know this, so I'm speculating, but muscle tissue releases a myriad of hormones as well. And it could be that that there's a difference in expression of hormones, hormones like FGF21, for example. That is a muscle-derived hormone that can activate lipolysis. I don't know about that. I can't speak to it, but I do know that the estrogen effects simply enhance lipolysis on their own. So we can remove the muscle from the equation, although in the whole body we can't, and I believe it's very likely relevant. But just sticking with the sex hormones and the fat cell, estrogens simply activate lipolysis at a higher rate, especially at subcutaneous fat cells. And the differences go even further. The estrogens not only tell the body where to store fat, but also how to store it. One of the reasons females can store more fat than males pre-menopause and be much, much healthier is that the very nature of her fat cells is different because of the estrogens. Estrogens, specifically, particularly at the buttocks and hips, much to the woman's dismay perhaps, provide an almost limitless phenomenon of hyperplasia. So anytime the insulin or the progesterone is telling her body to store more fat, because they control how much fat the body stores, the estrogens will tell those tissues, buttocks, the fat tissue in the buttocks and hips, hey, the moment the fat cell gets a little big, just recruit another fat cell and recruit another fat cell and another fat cell. So she continues to store her fat there by making new fat cells. That might sound like a problem, and it might be a problem if she's trying to squeeze into her college jeans that she used to wear. But metabolically speaking, it's magic, because when fat tissue is growing through hyperplasia, the fat cells stay small and they stay very metabolically healthy. In men who have relatively much lower levels of estrogens, there is none of this hyperplastic stimulus. And so his fat cells, if there is a pressure to grow, not through progesterone, of course, exclusively through insulin, they almost totally grow through a process of hypertrophy. And the fatter the fat cell gets, the sicker it gets and begins to promote insulin resistance throughout the body. So the protective effects of the estrogens go through multiple levels here, not only burning fat at a higher rate at any moment, but also altering the very nature of how she stores fat at those locations particularly.